For, for what purpose, Your Master?
I want to ask a couple of questions unless
was
Senator Wentworth is going to pull it down to give.
I'm not going to pull it down, no, sir.
Okay. Senator, let me ask you this. You mentioned the Virginia Tech tragedy. Do you know how many states have considered comparable legislation to yours since the Virginia Tech tragedy, and how many have rejected it? Legislation.
I do not know. I think some of the witnesses referred to that before the Senate Criminal Justice Committee, and apparently several states have considered a bill like this. Utah has passed a bill like this. Colorado has passed a version like this, but I couldn't give you the numbers of states.
Well, Senator, for you and other members, particularly Senator Lucio, I want you to know that 23 states have defeated bills or tabled bills exactly like the one you have since the Virginia Tech tragedy, including Alabama. They turned it down in 07, 08, and 09. Arizona, it failed in 10, 09, 08, and failed again this year since we've been in session. Arkansas in 09, Georgia, Idaho, it failed in 08 and 11. These southern states in particular, in Kentucky, it failed. In Louisiana, it failed. In Missouri, in Mississippi, Senator Wentworth. And I just want to make sure members are aware, if we move precipitously to do this, what we're doing. College campuses are the safest places anybody can be in this country. Even with all of the guns that we have in Texas, more than most other states. You know, we do a lot of complaining about border security, and we do a lot of complaining about the trade in terms of people having an appetite for drugs to bring them on this side of the border, but we don't talk about all of the guns from our side of the border that are going down there. Senator, are you aware of how many homicides we've had on college campuses and post-secondary campuses in Texas since 2001?
No, that's not a statistic
Okay.
I carry around in my head.
It is 5 at most. Senator, are you aware of the number of attempted suicides that we have on college campuses in America every year?
No, I don't. That's not something I...
Senator, over 1,000 successful suicides every year, nationwide amongst college students, with a further 24,000 attempts every year.
Senator, my best guess is that those were not on college campuses. They may have been by college students, but my guess is that the vast majority of those occurred off college campuses.
Well, the point that I want to make to you, Senator,
my bill doesn't refer to off-housing, off-campus housing. My bill refers only to college campuses.
What the point that I'm trying to make to you is that when our kids go to college, unfortunately, they engage in a lot of behavior until they get through that cycle where they have grown out of it. Stuff like binge drinking. You got any idea what percentage of our kids engage in, you know what binge drinking is?
I've heard about it, but
okay.
My guess is, once again, it doesn't happen on college campuses.
Well, I think you'd be shocked to know how much of it... I think you'd be shocked to know how much of it does happen on college campuses or pretty close, Senator. I'm told that behavior impacts about 50% of our students.
Well, in Texas, you have to be both 21 years of age to buy alcohol and 21 years of age to have a concealed handgun license. So the kids that you're talking about that are engaged in binge drinking are probably, violating another law, those that are under 21.
And I will concede that point. But the reality is far too many of them are getting access to alcohol, oftentimes on our campuses. They may buy it over on 6th Street, but they end up with it on our college campuses. And what I'm asking you is, do you think that that's a toxic mix or not, to have guns and alcohol?
Senator, most students, I think you would admit, do not go to class drunk. Most students go sober. Most people that go to class are not drinking either in class or just before they went to class. So I'm not certain that it's a relevant discussion at this point.
It's pretty relevant because, Senator, if you got your gun on campus, whether you go into class or not, the point is they have access to alcohol, and you know that. I mean, for someone who has spent so much time on education issues, I think you'll concede the point. Most kids, when they get away from home and end up on a college campus with that freedom, that's the first time that they get that taste of the magic, whatever it is, whether it's alcohol or some other substance. You will concede that is a problem on most of our college campuses, right?
It's a challenge.
Okay, all right. You concede it's a challenge. And if it's a challenge, do you think it makes sense to add to that challenge, to add to that equation,
you're talking about
a licensed handgun permit as well?
Senator Ellis, you're talking about two different things. You're talking about the challenge of alcohol, which I will concede is a challenge to some students, but it's generally on weekends, at parties, at night, in off-campus housing, other places, but not in the classroom. Drinking while in class is not a challenge.
Well, I certainly hope that our colleagues, who all have tremendous respect for you, Senator Wentworth, as I do, are listening to this dialogue. Because if there are 21 members on this floor who think that alcohol or other substances are not a problem, a serious problem with our young kids who are in college, that really shows just how out of touch we are with reality. And to add to that mix, guns is going to create far more problems than it's going to solve. So now I want to go back to this issue of why would you give the private schools the opportunity to opt out, but not our public universities? I mean, you know, your bill's going to apply to junior colleges, community colleges, all institutions of higher education. How do you make the distinction that if I can afford to put my kids in a private university, they get to make that choice, but not the kids who go into public university? I mean, just how can that distinction from a public policy standpoint withstand scrutiny? Why wouldn't we let them both vote on it? Why couldn't we let our students at the public universities vote on it? Why shouldn't they be given the same right to exercise that choice as a student body and administrators as our private schools?
Well, let me go over that again. As I indicated to Senator West, that was not my choice. If it were up to me, who's trying to keep all students safer than they are currently, I believe, I'd include private and public both. But in order to get that bill out of committee 2 years ago, I agreed to allow the privates to have the opt-out provision. And that's been maintained in this bill because I introduced essentially the same bill that passed this body 2 years ago.
Okay, well, as you know, I have an amendment. And that amendment will simply say, give the public institutions the same right, the same ability that we're going to give to students at the private universities and institutions of higher education. Will you support that?
As I've indicated to you before, I will not accept that amendment, and I'll speak against it because I don't think we ought to have a patchwork, a quilt kind of thing.
Your bill is giving us a patchwork.
No, sir. No, sir. My bill is uniform among public universities throughout the state.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm told by the community colleges it's going to raise their insurance costs for liability insurance, despite the fact that under your bill, you say they have no liability, but you can't stop the insurance rates from going up. And I'm told at one of my community colleges, they think it'll cost $1 million. Will you accept an amendment saying that the state should pick up that tab if someone can prove that their liability insurance goes up because of your bill?
No, I wouldn't. I'd be interested in knowing what community college that is and what insurance company told them that they were going to raise their rates, because I don't believe that that's well-founded.
Well, so
they're not basing that on the experience, for instance, in Utah and Colorado, which has now years of experience with a similar law in place, and they've had, Senator, not one incident of increased violence at all as a result of that law.
What about insurance rates going up?
I'm not certain about the insurance rates, but the insurance rates shouldn't go up because there's been no experience justifying such a rate increase.
So if you agree the insurance rates should not go up,
Yes, sir.
you would not oppose an amendment that simply says if they do go up, the state will pay for it. Since you say that it won't go up, why wouldn't you support that
I'll think
amendment?
about that.
Okay. Let me give you the third one, because I think members ought to know what you're thinking about before we vote to suspend the rules on this bill and run over Senator Lucio, who I think wants to check with the folks in his district to make sure that they sign off on this language. What about an amendment that says the insurance companies cannot raise the rate? Since you say it shouldn't go up.
No, I would oppose that amendment. I don't think we ought to be
kids are the
telling
insurance companies.
I just don't think we ought to be telling insurance companies in the free market system what they should and shouldn't be doing in relation to rates.
Can you say that one more time?
I don't believe we on this floor should be passing a law dictating to insurance companies how they should evaluate their risk in setting premiums.
But on this floor, we should pass a bill that tells university officials that they should take the risk of giving guns, letting kids on campus have guns. So you think it's all right for us to dictate what the universities do?
Ask, yes, officers, I'd like to have them removed. Senate rules do not allow banners or demonstrations in the Senate chamber. So if you all would leave, please.
What's that?
Let's continue.
So, Senator Wentworth, you think it's okay on this floor for us to dictate that universities have to permit students who are licensed to have guns, to have them on their campus, but you don't think it's appropriate for us to dictate what insurance companies can do in terms of liability rates for having guns on those campuses that you say should not raise liability rates? I just want to make sure I'm following you.
Let me sort of tweak, if I may, your question. I'm not talking about students. This is not mainly a students on campus bill. This is for license holders who are 21 years of age or older. We're talking about faculty members, staff members, graduate students.